We're just going to move on now to, can everyone confirm that I am now sharing my screen? We should be seeing the future webinars in the series. So yeah, so just moving on. This webinar series is really exciting and it's going to continue. So the 15th of February is our next webinar, where we're going to be talking about how blockchain, AI, Internet of Things is going to come together and change the world. Then we have one on the 7th of March, looking at how we're going to have the rise of technology and what we need to do around universal basic income, upskilling, or is there going to be mass unemployment? And on the 14th of March, we're going to be looking at, is blockchain going to change the world? We also have some live events coming up. On the 15th of March, we will, there's an event in Puerto Rico, which David is keynoting at. And then on the 24th, 27th, and 28th of March, David will be in South Africa. So for all of our South African viewers tonight, that's quite an exciting time, and we will be putting out some more information about that in as we go forward in the future. So be on the lookout on the Telegram group. That really is the place to find the information. And I wanted to paste it into the chat box, but unfortunately, my GoToWebinar is not allowing me to do that this evening. I don't know why. So you will all be receiving an email after this webinar, which will have the recording of this webinar as well as the link to that Telegram group. So if we just look at exactly where we are, this is something we speak about quite often, just in terms of where wealth migrates and wealthy is actually at the intersection of many technologies. And you know, this is really something that Justin mentioned tonight as well, that there's a number of different things that are happening right now where wealth migrate and the wealthy coin actually sit right at the intersection between gamification, blockchain, social commerce, personalization, the fact that there's a rise in the middle class in many emerging economies, globalization. There's a real social pressure around, you know, democratization to the access of wealth, and investors really want to make a purposeful impact. And you know, the one thing that Wealth Migrate really believe is important is, you know, impacting the planet in a way where we can see the wealth gap being reduced. So just for those of you who are new and haven't seen this before, this is sort of Wealth Migrate in numbers. And you know, Justin brought up how there are many token sales that are just built on a piece of paper. And you know, in Wealth Migrate's case, that is not the case. It's the platform has seen, as you can see there, more than $68 million going through it, with investors coming from 46 different countries around the world. So in terms of a you know, successful ICO, you know, an existing business that's making money is really important, and we've shown that this is the case with Wealth Migrate. Having a team that can execute in any market is really important. And this is just a slide showing the board. There's Justin there, but the board, and there's a management team behind it that are really passionate about what they're doing, and global as well in scope. And then the third thing is really having supply and demand to ensure that you have mass consumer adoption. And if we look at the Wealth Migrate platform in terms of numbers of registered users, you can see in 2017 the number really climbed. And this actually is an old graph. I should have put in the new graph that arrived today, but I didn't. For 2018, we're already at just over 2,000 people for the year. This is where the members come from. It's more than half the world. And the transactions through the platform, this is where people are actually investing, you can see is on an upward movement, which really is a good sign. The investors coming from 46 countries, so those are the countries that the investors come from. And you know, Peter Diamandis always says the world's biggest problems, the world's biggest opportunities. And you know, the wealth gap really is a massive problem. You know, at Davos for the World Economic Forum, they always talk about wealth gap. Unfortunately, it actually is growing. It started to decline, but it is growing once again. And there really is a big opportunity to give people access to something they've never had before. So when it comes to Wealthy and the ecosystem that is being built, this is an ecosystem picture just showing you where the Wealthy coin will fit into the ecosystem with Wealth Migrate and the potential for many other real estate partners to come on board. And with regards to the token sale, this slide just, if you're on your mobile phone, it is really small, but this picture is in the white paper, which we will be releasing most likely next week. At the moment, we're going through a number of things together with the Wealth Migrate board to make sure that everything is in place that needs to be in place to ensure that we're doing this right. And then in terms of the timing, the crowd sale will begin on the 14th of March. So in terms of the sort of next steps, if you are interested, please do contact us. My email address is there. As well as I spoke about, we do have a Telegram group which is becoming more active at the moment, and so please do become part of the community, have your say, and sign up. So at this time, we have had a few questions from people throughout the webinar that we've had this evening. So if you do have any further questions, you can type those into the question box now. We're going to go into this time of questions and answers with David and Justin. And so if you do have any questions, as I say, please type those in, and I'll be going through those questions now. So if we look at the first question that was asked, if we're in pre-browser phase, this question actually said, David, if we're in pre-browser phase, what is the graphical interface of blockchain going to look like?
Nothing. It will look probably nothing, because we are already moving into conversational interfaces, and I see no reason to re-implement on an old generation of interfaces the functionality of new interactions. So yes, today we install decentralized applications as mobile apps, wallets and exchanges and other things. But moving ahead, I believe that many more people will be reachable through a dialogue system that we will need to completely still design.
Okay, no, great. Just so everyone knows, I am going to be putting up some polls whilst we're answering these questions. We really ask these polls so that we can get feedback from the community and understand where everyone is. So whilst you're sitting there, please do sort of click the answer on the polls there. The next question says, what is the point of blockchain? From Lorette. She says, is it to decentralize every centralized thing, banks, governments? What is the point and how far is it going to go?
Laying down a train track is probably not going to be decided in a decentralized manner in the future either, right? So there will be things that are centralized just as they are today. The point of blockchain is that it is an invention, a very recent invention, a mathematical invention that solved an unsolved problem. Before blockchain, we didn't know whether it was possible to establish a shared truth without somebody that we needed to trust centrally. Now we know it is possible to establish a shared truth without trusting a central authority. And the consequences of this mathematical invention are being explored in the blockchain.
Okay, yeah. So are we, how far is it going to go, and how quickly do you think we're going to see governments looking to actually use this technology and sort of from a decentralized, centralized point of view?
No, absolutely. So we have to distinguish 3-4 different things here in this question. Nation states are the supreme centralized organization today on the planet. You know, they are extremely powerful, extremely dangerous. Nobody killed more people ever than nation states, right? Luckily, we have fewer and fewer wars. Nation states are becoming tamer and tamer. So we have a chance of reforming them using blockchain technologies without the nation states becoming too panicky and you know, creating violence as a consequence, hopefully. But the other part is, is Bitcoin going to be used by nation states? Not necessarily. One of the reasons why fiat money, dollars or euro or yen, exist is because you are legally required to pay your taxes with them. So this use of fiat money is going to survive for a long time. And the third implicit question in the one that you asked me is whether blockchain-based governance is going to reform how we vote, how we decide policies, what the policy making and the regulatory environment is going to be in a society that is going to be more and more potentially decentralized, even if still existing under the umbrella of a nation state. And I believe that there will be, and there are actually already experiments of blockchain technologies enabling electronic voting, more flexible and more better adapted types of democracy, rather than the dictatorship of the majority that today we exercise.
Okay, yeah. The Manu's question sort of follows that up. He asked, how do you see governments regulating blockchain applications?
Well, they can't really. China and so very simply, you know, the first blockchain application is Bitcoin, and still the most successful one. So we can look at what is going on with Bitcoin and then project out, forecast out from there. And China and Russia were very aggressive and arrogant and proud in their declarations little more than a year and a half ago, when both were saying we are already preparing legislation to make Bitcoin illegal, right? And then they realized they couldn't do it. When the Arab Spring happened in Egypt, the government shut the internet off for 48 hours to stop the rebels from coordinating on Facebook and Twitter. And then they turned it back on because it was like choking the nation itself that could not survive without the internet. The revolution was less of a problem than not having the internet, right? So soon it is going to be like that with blockchain and Bitcoin. Even if technically it were possible, and it is not, stopping blockchain and Bitcoin will choke the economic breath of a society And so it is something that nobody will want to do. And no, so nations, the states will try to regulate things, of course, that's what bureaucracies do, so they will do it, but the most successful ones are going to be those that keep this regulation at the minimum possible.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd add to that, Kevin. You know, remember that ultimately governments are appointed by the crowd, and so they can't really afford to kill off innovation. And I actually believe that a bit of regulation will encourage broad adoption. I think it's actually, you know, it'll be good to have some limited regulation, just to give it credibility, to take the rogues out of the industry, and I think that's what will help it to accelerate faster than if it has to find its own way.
No, absolutely. So Lorette asks, do you think that we're just going to have a few big players in the space, like the internet has a few big players in 20, 30 years time, when there's, you know, blockchain players, there's just going to be big players? Or because of its decentralized sort of nature, is it going to be, you know, is that not going to be the case? Or is it something we don't even know?
Well, yes, obviously we don't know, but that doesn't stop us pretending that we do, right? So there will be very, very, very big networks, right? Today, one of the biggest centralized networks is Facebook. Let's say 2 billion people, probably a little bit less, but let's say 2 billion. So there will be networks based on blockchain that are larger than Facebook. Will they represent the kind of centralized governance and shareholder structure and the kind of wealth concentration that Facebook represented? I don't believe so. And the participation in those networks will be as if it were widely distributed share ownership. You know, it is not that. It's just an analogy where everybody will be incentivized to behave and to vote and to decide and to participate for the benefit of those networks. And we will participate in many, many, many of those networks, hundreds or potentially thousands of those networks.
Yeah. Linda just asks, says, David, can you repeat the predicted value of the peak? That's like looking into a crystal ball.
Yeah. Well, it's easy because I didn't say when, right? So what I said is the network value of blockchain assets is going to exceed what the total market capitalization of .com companies was before the crash. So that was $1 trillion, right? So I am saying that the total network value of the crypto assets is going to exceed $3 trillion. And let me go out on a limb. I believe that is going to happen within the next 5 years.
Justin, we won't ask you because you're too conservative. So Amanda just says, what's the next best thing past Bitcoin? Is there, technology is moving so fast at the moment, is there going to be a new blockchain? You know, is there something after blockchain that's even better? Again, crystal ball stuff.
No, absolutely. It is already happening, right? Bitcoin itself is evolving as code. Some people are saying, hey, I do better. I can know better. I know how to resolve the problems of Bitcoin, of scaling, transaction fees, choking of the network. They created Bitcoin Cash. So if you believe they are right, you should use Bitcoin Cash. You should maybe buy or hold Bitcoin Cash. You should transact in Bitcoin Cash. And that is kind of voting with your feet and with your money. The same with Ethereum. Ethereum has a much richer programming language that enables more sophisticated programs. On top of the Ethereum blockchain live a lot of the tokens that in the ICOs, the token sales projects are minting and then selling or distributing in various ways. And then there are alternative blockchains on top of the Bitcoin and Ethereum blockchain, like Neo in China, that appears to be, receiving kind of a stamp of approval from the Chinese government to then be the basis of Chinese blockchain projects. And there will be many, many, many more. And the speed with which they are evolving is extremely fast. Because contrary to Microsoft, if you found a bug in Microsoft Word and you told them or they realized there was a bug and then you needed to wait years before the new version came out, what is happening today is that in an open source project, there are thousands of developers working and trying to make it better. And that is actually a good measure of the success of a blockchain project, to look, and there are ways to monitor how frequently it is updated, how many people are contributing to it, and it really creates an incredibly fast evolution.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's so true. Anne says, will there be a dark blockchain like the dark web, or does decentralization means that's impossible?
There already is. And the reason the dark web is dark is because it is absolutely appropriate and necessary to preserve privacy in your transactions. I encourage all of our listeners not to buy drugs or do anything illegal, but to be proud of every step they take to make sure that their private thoughts and private communications stay private. The false dichotomy of secrecy that we need to renounce in order to keep us safe is extremely dangerous. It makes us all less safe. A society that wants to adapt to the changing attitudes and behaviors of its component members must be able to move from a minority position to a majority position. And it is happening all the time, whether it is same-sex marriage or recreational marijuana, or whatever it is going to be the future shift. These are changes in the society in the United States, for example, that under a totalitarian gaze of an watching government that excludes privacy cannot happen. So welcome the dark web and welcome the dark blockchain. Monero is a relatively recent coin that, contrary to Bitcoin, which is pseudonymous, Monero is anonymous. So the cost of unraveling who is behind the transaction and how much was transacted and who was it sent to is enormous. It is, for every practical matter, impossible to find a Monero transaction and unravel it. And, you know, a lot of people are afraid of that, but I think it is an important component of our society.
Okay. Right now, this is the last question that we've got currently. So if there are any further questions that anyone has to ask, now's the time to ask them. Otherwise, this is the last one and it's time to go. It's from Donovan. He says, do you think China will be able to block cryptos, is his question. And I'll add to that, do you think China want to block cryptos? Or is it just that they want to make sure that they know what's going on?
So there are different issues around China. One is that it is, the preeminent centralized planned economy and successful at that. 50 years ago, there are tens of millions of people who were starving in China, and now they are not. The creation of the Chinese middle class is one of the biggest success stories of the 20th century. So we should be extremely proud of that. But they are ready to give up individual freedom in order to assure the functioning of the society as they believe it should. And that includes capital controls. And Bitcoin represents a payment rail, a transaction rail that they cannot control, and they don't like that. So what they are doing is to control the interfaces. Once you are in the blockchain world, in the Bitcoin world, you are beyond their control. But as you want to move into it, buying Bitcoin with your yen, for example, that's where they can exercise control, and that is what they are doing. They basically are making crypto exchanges illegal, and then they will try and re-establish them under some kind of licensed model and under extremely tight control. And it is not still very clear how that is going to happen. But the interfaces between the old and the new world, that is where this can happen.
Okay, great. Thanks, David. So it seems like we don't have any further questions at the moment, and it's pretty much time for the webinar to come to a close anyway. So just some closing thoughts from either of you with regards to what we've spoken about tonight. Wealth Migrate and the Wealthy Coin. Justin, we'll start with you.
Well, obviously the white paper hasn't been released yet, but there's been quite a lot of work put into it, and I think we're all pretty excited to see what it entails. But I think that we're in a unique situation. We know that blue chip real estate is a fantastic security. It's not volatile like stock markets. And the better quality the asset, the less accessible it is to people outside of that particular circle. And when I say circle, it might be the few high net worth individuals in New York that are associated with that particular group or building. Open that circle up wider and wider, and it becomes much more accessible for people to make that investment in that blue chip asset. And one of the problems that we need to solve is the moving of the currency. You cannot invest a small amount of money with the fiat currencies if you are sitting in a country like India, or for that matter, South Africa. It is very complicated. So it makes it unviable to invest the $50 a month. And that's the problem that we're trying to solve. And hopefully we can solve that problem. And this is a technology that wasn't available for us to do so 5 years ago.
Great. Thanks, Justin. Thanks so much. And David?
Well, I am definitely looking forward to the next steps in the Wealth Migrate blockchain journey and token journey. I believe that the team and the business model are absolutely ready to bring the benefit of your platform to an even wider audience. And this is what it is about, an inclusive platform of participation, creating a network that can teach, that can emancipate as many people as possible. And so that is why these webinars are so good, as well as your effort in cutting them up and posting them on YouTube. It's really part of what we do and what Wealth Migrate does in sharing knowledge and empowering everybody.
Absolutely. I mean, that really is our goal. And so thank you to the two of you. It's really been a pleasure to talk to you this evening for me, and to everyone who's online. Thank you so much for joining. As I said, we will be, you'll be getting some more information around the recordings of this. And yeah, it's very exciting times. Please, once this is online, share it with people, build the community, and you know, we're really headed for exciting times ahead. So thank you very much to the two of you, and good night, everybody, or good morning if you're in New Zealand.
Okay.
Bye-bye.